Today I'm going to be going over the hardest level of each difficulty rating in GD as of June 8th, 2019, going from all the way to Auto to Extreme Demon. So sit back and relax, because I have a lot to talk about. For each level, I will be primarily focusing on its gameplay along with the history of the level and why it's rated the way it is, when each is applicable. I will also be giving the true difficulty of the level, or the difficulty if the level were rated correctly, along with the hardest part of each level. And although this may sound complicated, but just for clarity, in this video I will be referring to two terms that sound similar but are quite different: impossible and impossible difficulty. Impossible difficulty is when a level is so difficult that it is impossible for a normal human to replicate and complete, but it may be able to be completed with speed hacks. Impossible is when a level is quite literally impossible and cannot be completed even with speed hacks. An example of this could be a wall in a level that cannot be passed. Impossible levels still possess impossible difficulty. I also wanted to establish that all of the gameplay in this video is my own, along with a few auto playthroughs if I deem the gameplay too hard for myself. Be sure to keep in mind that all of this is my opinion, meaning that anything I say in this video holds complete truth and cannot be debated whatsoever. With that said, let's begin. The auto category is a weird one. One may think, well, all auto levels are auto, so how can one be more difficult than the other? Well, not exactly. There are several levels in the game that are rated auto, but are not actually auto. There are three main factors that may cause this. 1. The level was rated at a time where difficulty for 1-star levels was easy. There was a period of time before auto levels even existed where there was an easy 1-star difficulty for levels. And when the auto rating was created, it replaced the easy 1-star rating on all of these levels, creating levels rated auto that were not actually auto. They were easy 1-star. 2. The author of the level has updated it, making the gameplay no longer auto. 3. The levels become bugged in certain parts due to game updates. This can make certain levels impossible entirely. So for the auto category, I've decided to create two subcategories: impossible auto levels and possible auto levels. For the hardest impossible auto level, I chose Auto Dragon. It is obvious that the reason this level is now impossible is because of game updates to the game, which change the hitboxes of certain objects very slightly, which cause the level to become impossible. For example, in the beginning, we can see the player barely touches a mini portal suspended in the ground, which is unavoidable, making a jump later in the level impossible. When this level was verified, the author probably never touched the portal. How could have he done this, considering that today there seems to be no way to avoid it? Well, after this level was verified, an update probably came to the game that changed the hitbox of the portal very slightly, causing the player to touch it every time, meaning that when verifying the level, the author was able to avoid the portal. The true difficulty of this level is of course impossible. For the hardest possible auto level, I chose Geometry Map 8 Auto. This appears to have originally been a generic 1.6 auto level, which there seems to be no footage of on YouTube today. In 2015, the author of the level updated it to a single small 4-spike jump, looking like this. A short while later, the author updated the level into the horrible level it is today, a short but disgusting maze of fakes. This level remains difficult in the fact that it forces you to work against your muscle memory, combined with the fact that you must memorize all the fakes. The hardest part of this level is probably the very end of the ball part, as it's faster than the very beginning and there's a lot of quick changes that must be made. The true difficulty of this level probably sits around that of an insane 8 stars level. Alright, moving on to easy. Unsurprisingly, the hardest 2-star level in the game remains Xmas Challenge. This 1.9 challenge is one of the only rated challenges in the game, and it isn't too hard, but it is definitely much harder than any other 2-star level. It has not been updated since its release. The hardest part of this level is probably the beginning ship part, which ends up bottlenecking about 50% of your attempts. The true difficulty of this level probably sits around that of a harder 6-star level. For normal, Beautiful Eyes remains the hardest 3-star level in the game right now by far. I'm pretty sure most of us can remember 99, which would probably take the cake for the hardest 3-star level, but it has sadly been unrated for a long time now. Now, what caused this level, Beautiful Eyes, to get such an easy rating? Well, according to several YouTube comments I've read, Beautiful Eyes used to be a different level entirely, which received its appropriate 3-star rating. Sadly, I could not find any footage of the original level. After the making of Beautiful Eyes, the author of the level, T-Girl, made another level called Fire Circles, an ugly-looking 9 circles ripoff. However, this level never ended up being rated. T-Girl really wanted some type of rating on Fire Circles, so they ended up replacing the original Beautiful Eyes level with the gameplay of Fire Circles, and that's where we stand today. The hardest part of this level is probably the memory cube part at the beginning, as there's quite a few things you need to memorize. The true difficulty of this level probably sits around Easy Demon level. Just a disclaimer before we get into these next few levels, I only have a limited amount of gameplay of these levels, as they are so hard to the point where it is difficult to complete them and show their gameplay even with speed hacks and no clip. It took me hours of speed hacking these levels to get footage of their gameplay that I can use. And I'm not encouraging you to hack the game either. I did it on a copy, and only for educational purposes and to showcase these levels to you guys. Alright, so this is where things start to get interesting. There are currently several levels rated 4 stars that are much harder than 4 stars, like Story Madness, which is hard demon difficulty, or Illuminati, which is impossible without speed hacks. However, there remains one 4-star level that triumphs them all in difficulty, Round by Big Bad Builder. I don't know where to even start with this level. From old YouTube videos, we can tell that this level used to be a generic 2.0 effect level. A few months ago, the author decided to update the level into 3 stars, and eventually into an ugly, impossibly difficult level. This level is so hard that it remains extremely difficult even with speed hacks, and in my opinion is the hardest rated level in the game right now. Illuminati has a relatively similar story, as it used to be a generic 1.9 effect level, but was eventually updated to make the gameplay impossible. Now one may ask what makes this level harder than Illuminati, despite them both being impossible without speed hacks. Well, not all of the gameplay in Illuminati is impossible. The only thing that is nearly impossible for a human to repeatedly execute is this extremely tight wave section shown here. Round, however, is much harder than Illuminati, and the entire level consists of impossible gameplay. The hardest part of this level remains any of its extremely tight mini-wave parts, and the true difficulty is impossible. On to hard 5 stars, we have a level with a pretty similar story to that of Round. Nargothrond, another 2.0 effect level, eventually turned into an impossibly difficult nightmare. This whole level consists of a plethora of invisible walls and spikes combined to make some disgusting gameplay, and is honestly some of the worst I've ever been forced to play within this game. However, it gets even better, as a good 95% of the level remains an undecorated layout. I'm almost inclined to believe that the gameplay in the beginning of the level is stolen, simply because of how trash the rest of the level looks after it. Although at least there is a not-so-secret way that takes you through a good 20% of the level. The true difficulty of this level is impossible, and the hardest part is the invisible mini-wave 12% into the level shown here. For harder 6 stars, the hardest level at the moment remains Alive by Carmal, everyone's favorite player. Alive was originally a generic 2.0 gameplay level, but after it was rated, Carmal updated it to include an ugly but difficult straight flying section at the end of the level. This brought the difficulty of the level up by a great amount, and today sits as the hardest 6-star level in the game. The true difficulty of this level is probably somewhere around a medium demon, and the hardest part is of course the flying part at the end of the level. For harder 7 stars, the hardest level is Regret Cave by Sergei Esther, which has a pretty similar story to Alive. Sergei Esther originally created this level as a simple 7-star gameplay level, and a little while after it was rated, decided to buff it to hard demon difficulty. This made the level slightly harder than Hazy Blood, allowing it to take the number 1 spot for hardest 7-star level. The hardest part of this level is probably the mini ship parts at around 80%, as you have to go through some extremely tight spots, and the true difficulty of this level is about hard demon. We have an interesting level for the hardest 8-star level. At the moment, the hardest level is Fallen Era 2, which is the level you are seeing on screen right now. One might think, but this looks exactly like Silent Clubstep, and you are exactly right. The level Fallen Era 2 was originally a typical 2.0 gameplay level, but soon after making the level, the author, who goes by Pse or Zwenti on YouTube, appears to have quit the game, as the last time he uploaded a video on YouTube or made a level was 2 years ago. However, before he quit, he decided to update his most popular level, which was Fallen Era 2, to a redecorated version of Silent Clubstep as a sort of goodbye message, I guess. After this, it looks like he must have been banned from the game for one reason or another, as his profile is completely dead. This isn't an exact copy of Silent Clubstep's gameplay though, as many parts seem to have been nerfed slightly, namely most of the ship parts of the level, the dual part, and the mini cube jumps. However, many of the parts of the level that gave Silent Clubstep its impossible difficulty still remain, including the annoyingly inconsistent orb spamming parts. Along with this, Fallen Era 2 still appears to be harder than Silentium Gratis. The hardest part of this level, in my opinion, is the 2 space orb spam part, as it is extremely inconsistent and hard to pull off most of the time. This seems to be the only part of the level holding it back from extreme demon difficulty, otherwise it might be humanly possible. And as a result, the true difficulty of this level is of course impossible. Harder 9 stars is another weird category. Many people believe Supersonic V2 by Landis to be the hardest insane 9 stars level, and in a way, they're right. But there is another insane level that makes Supersonic V2 look like an easy demon. Robotic Paradise by Tacho Macho is an insane level filled with annoying, buggy gameplay, and a bug at 85% that makes the level impossible. So we have reached the same dilemma we faced with the auto category, and we will have to create 2 separate subcategories for the hardest insane 9-star level, possible and impossible. Supersonic V2 remains the hardest 9-star level that can actually be completed. It unsurprisingly remains very similar to the style of the original Supersonic, but includes much more memory and quite a few harder timings, especially in the beginning ship section, and despite being shorter, it still feels a bit harder than Supersonic in my opinion. The hardest part in my opinion is the ship section in the beginning, and the true difficulty of this level is Insane Demon. Robotic Paradise is something completely different. It remains technically the hardest Insane 9-star level because of a bug that makes it impossible, but even if there was no bug at 85%, it would surpass Supersonic V2 in difficulty by a landslide, and I believe it could potentially even make the Demons list. This level has some crazy, nearly frame-perfect timings, along with bugs dispersed throughout the entire level, creating a very frustrating level of extreme demon difficulty. If the level were possible and the bug were fixed, the hardest part is the rest of the level after 75%, as it includes an extremely precise wave part along with many other extremely precise timing parts. Once again, if the bug were fixed, the level would easily be an extreme demon, but because the version we are discussing is impossible, the difficulty still remains impossible. Finally, we get on to the demons. Rather than just doing the demon difficulty as a whole, I will go through each individual demon difficulty and discuss the hardest level for each. I have a feeling this one is going to be slightly controversial, but for Easy Demon, I chose a bait by Motley Orc. For me, the hardest Easy Demon was between Liberation, which many say is easily the hardest Easy Demon, and this level. I never really understood what was so difficult about Liberation though. Other than the dual part at the end, which was hard at first but relatively easy to master, I never had much trouble with this level. Of course it was more difficult than almost every other Easy Demon, but not more difficult than a bait. A bait to me felt much harder than the average Easy Demon due to its constant fast transitions, numerous bugs, and very bright decoration, which for me made it much more difficult to process the level as I played it. The hardest part is definitely the orb part at around 50%, as it felt super inconsistent and I ended up dying there often. I would say the true difficulty of this level is Medium Demon. For our Medium Demon, I know I'm going to butcher this, Twah by Mazel was by far harder than any other Medium Demon. This level just felt like it had transitions that did not belong on a Medium Demon. Or I don't know, maybe I'm just horrible at the spider. The hardest part in my opinion is probably the UFO part after the drop at 48% all the way to the wave transition after the ball, as it has pretty precise timings. And I would say the true difficulty of this level is Hard Demon. We're starting to get to the point where these levels are getting too difficult for me to play and process, so I'm going to be largely going off of what other people believe. For the hardest Hard Demon, we have After Catabath by Boy of the Cones. After Catabath is currently placed 138 on the demons list, and it's crazy to me that there's hard demons that are placing above extreme demons. I don't really enjoy this level that much. The gameplay just feels unoriginal and boring. No one really knows why it was only rated hard. For levels of this difficulty, it's hard to say truly what the hardest part is, as it can entirely depend on the player and what their strengths are. But because all of this is my opinion, I'm just going to go what I think is the hardest part from what I've seen others say. In my opinion, the hardest part seems to be the wave section at the very beginning of the level, as timings are hardest here. And the true difficulty of this level is probably Extreme Demon, solely because it ranks on the demons list closely to other Extreme Demons. For Insane Demon, the hardest level remains Killer Zone by Durami. And there's actually a story behind this one. Killer Zone was originally an Insane Demon and created as such, but Durami, unsatisfied with the level I guess, who knows, decided to buff it to Extreme Demon level. Today it remains the hardest Insane Demon on the demons list, placed at 111. One of the ways he buffed the level was by changing many of the normal wave sections into mini waves, which created deadly sections that required crazy consistency. As a result, this level can become extremely frustrating at times. The hardest part is probably the wave section at 50% that was buffed into a mini wave section in the extreme version, as it feels almost impossible to get it right every time. And the true difficulty of this level is Extreme Demon. Lastly, for Extreme Demon, we unsurprisingly have Zodiac as the hardest Extreme Demon. I don't think there's too much to be said about this. A mega collab hosted by Beanox turned into a 3-minute monster of a level. The hardest part truly varies per player here, but to me, the hardest part seems to be Enelix's part at the very end of the level, as requiring such precise timings and nearly perfect wave at the end of the level creates a very scary experience for the player. And the true difficulty of this level is obviously Extreme Demon. Now I know there's probably plenty of error in this video, and there's probably even some things I got downright wrong. Therefore I would appreciate any sort of feedback on this video, which you can do by commenting on, liking, or disliking the video. This is my first time making GD content, and even playing the game within the last 4 years. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you learned something new from this, and I hope to make more, better content in the future.